Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 59 of the Knuckle Sammich podcast, the official MMA podcast of Sauce on the Side. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
I'd like to recognize that us Mexicans are taking over sports. We now have a heavyweight boxing champion, and real quick, guess how many Mexicans have been in the NBA?
4.
God! He ruined
Was that right?
Was he right?
He was right because we looked it up earlier.
4?
No, I'm just an expert on all country
on
NBA
all
players.
Mexicans.
Yeah, all Mexicans.
They almost have a whole team, a whole starting
Mr.
five.
Mexico.
We've taken over boxing. The big man, specifically the big man boxing, we're coming for the NBA.
He's the most out of shape heavyweight champion.
But he's
ever.
really not. He's
I know
really
what.
not.
He looked down in 7 months.
That who?
The guy who won. What's his face?
He just
Andy.
had a fight a couple weeks ago.
Well, it looks like he hadn't looked down in 7 months.
Leighton just looks at him and just assumes that
He looks like he
Yeah.
hasn't. No, he looks like he hasn't worked out in about 17 years.
He was on his couch. He was on the couch eating Cheetos on Monday. They called him. Hey, we need to come fight this guy. All right, I'll be there.
No, do you know how he got the fight?
I think that's I know how, because Big Baby Miller did all the Mexican drugs possible.
In Instagram, he reached out to the promoter on Instagram and asked him if he could take that fight because they had a guy pull out.
Yeah, Big Baby Miller was supposed to fight, and he popped positive for like 50 different steroids.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Hey, he's just trying to get a leg up.
50 different steroids?
It was a bunch. It wasn't like one of those he popped for a little bit of this. It was like multiple on the steroids.
Yeah, he wasn't taking Adderall. He was taking HGH.
Yeah, he was doing everything.
He was in Balco. No, this guy, Andy Ruiz, actually reached out via Instagram message and got the fight. He reached out to the promoter and said, "Hey, I'm not doing anything that day. I'll take that fight."
I think so just a little background on him. He was 101-5 in amateur boxing. So he had 106 amateur boxing fights, won 101. He was a 2-time junior Olympic gold medalist and a 2-time Olympian for Mexico. I think he's like 32-1, and his one loss was I forget the guy's name is escaping me, but that dude had also fought Anthony Joshua, and Joshua beat him, but it was a fight. So it was a gigantic surprise. I mean, I don't follow boxing, but when I saw the knockdowns and saw the guy, it's basically what Leighton said. It looked like he'd just eaten every milkshake on earth for the past 7 years. And just went out there and just demolished this dude that's supposed to be the the all-around best champion.
And maybe the best part of the whole entire fight was the fact that his gloves, usually your wrists go up and then the gloves come out. This guy, his wrists went down and his gloves fed right into his wrist. Yeah. And they looked so tiny on him.
It looked like he was just punching with his fist, really.
Yes.
I think that's just because of the size of the rest of his body.
Yeah. It was awesome. Kind of reminds me a little Donkey Kong-esque,
Yeah.
But
dude's got a lot of skills.
Yeah, and you watch videos of him working out. He's a super fast guy, unbelievably quick.
I tagged you in that one on Twitter where he's got super quick feet. You know what it kind of reminds me of a little bit is Big Country, except this guy is in his cardio shape's insane. He never got tired at all, whereas Big Country always tends to get tired towards the end. So.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that was the case.
I think they're supposedly already have a lot of those fights. They already have the rematch in the clause, so that they're supposed to go to England.
The money's in the rematch.
The money is in the rematch. The big thing with this was Anthony Joshua's first time fighting in America. So this was supposed to be. It was at MGM, or not MGM Grand, Madison Square Gardens, MSG.
Did you see Andy Ruiz actually wore a Knicks jersey?
I did when he came into
that's the People's Champ.
One of the Barstool guys that are big Knicks fans, I forget, but he shared the tweet. when he came out like to the thing, he just came out and said, "Somebody put some respect on my name," and he's just wearing a Knicks jersey. He's not dressed nice at all. One of the dudes were like, "I love this man." I think it was KFC. He's like, "I'm in love with this man." Like the dude looks like the fattest man on earth. Shows up to like an event that generally people are in like custom suits, looking good. He's in a Knicks jersey.
The only way it would have been better if he had been wearing like a Zion Williamson jersey. Like that would have been the best. He just got like
accidentally bought one when they thought they were going to get him.
Yes, just accidentally came across one. His buddy's like, "Dude, it'd be so cool if you wore this," and he just can't read the room.
Yeah.
No, but I absolutely love that. I think it's good for boxing. Everybody's saying how it's bad for boxing.
Sure. No.
How it's bad for boxing. How we were expecting a Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua fight, or we were expecting Tyson Fury to fight one of those guys. Guys, it's boxing. Guess what? Those fights would have never happened, and if they did, they were going to happen about 5 years out of their prime.
Yeah. No, was it a giant upset? Yeah. But let's flip it on its ear. What if Anthony Joshua would have knocked him out in like a minute? We wouldn't even be talking about it. Nobody would have known it happened. It was on DAZN again, so it didn't. The only reason anybody's talking about it is because Ruiz won.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's good for boxing.
And now, it kind of sets up. I did see again the other day Fury and Wilder are signing to fight again.
Good.
So we'll get that dealt with, and then Ruiz and Joshua will have their rematch, and hopefully to God they've learned their lesson and just match the best guys against the best
you
guys.
have to strike when the iron's hot. Like, you can't just continue to put these guys against lower tier guys, because even in MMA you're starting to notice that the gap is narrowing between the very, very top and your middle tier guys who you usually used as fluffers.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen anymore.
And eventually it's going to catch up to you. I mean, if you're kind of Eddie Hearn, which is his promoter's, like, kind of just, just giving them these fights that they're fights, but they, he's going to win. Well, guess what? Sometimes there's this little fat Mexican guy that doesn't know he's supposed to lose and just beats your brains in for 7 rounds and somehow doesn't get tired. So
yeah, I absolutely love it. I think it's as good as a thing that could have happened for boxing. Because like Deontay Wilder, we'd even talked last week. We were like, didn't he just fight recently? I think he fought. Well, we know Anthony Joshua fought.
Yeah, we do.
So that's a good thing for boxing. So, guys, we are going to break down the last 2 fights from UFC Fight Night 153 and talk about maybe the biggest card of the year with UFC 238. So, Latency, producer, you know what to do.
Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich Podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford, a Sauce on the Side production.
All right, Mr. Shackelford. Quick note here. Did you hear the news?
what news?
Latency. So Latency wasn't here last week to talk about the Magnificent Mile that we had all ran against each other.
Oh, you knew I beat Thomas's ass in the mile race?
Yes, when you absolutely destroyed Thomas's hopes and dreams.
We went over
but
that.
Here's the thing. What's more important? The win or the fame? What would you rather have? Win or a fame?
Fame, of course.
The win.
Okay, well, at least you guys are getting what you want. Mr. Shackelford will actually be on the bi-monthly... he will be the cover of a racing magazine in Southern Illinois.
On the cover?
He's going to be on his finish at the line. What place did you get overall?
What's it?
The one where he's falling over dying?
Give me all kinds of thrills.
I think you got 37th overall. Yes, you did you know that? You're going to be on the cover.
I have heard an inkling that I perhaps might be on the cover.
Yes.
That's insane. That's awesome, though.
Yeah. Mr. Shackelford crossing. And the best part is that the picture is him crossing the finish line, about to fall into the inflatable finish line.
Oh, yeah, no,
and just absolutely destroy it.
You know what sucks is I used to run a ton of races, like somewhat competitively. I bet you I've ran 50 races. And this one, they take a picture of me. Just because we know some people that know some people, they're putting me on the cover. Pathetic.
It was the
They
heart.
couldn't get me 10 years ago when I was like looking pretty good in shape, crossing the finish line shirtless like a breeze. They had to go now to where I'm like about to black out on some kid's inflatable fun.
No, I think that was possibly the best picture that they could put for that. I mean, what else are they going to do? Are they going to put the guy who's chiseled, who's like crossing the finish line, and everybody looks at it like, I'm never going to be this guy? Or you look at it, it's like, this guy's overcome some demons. He ran it about a minute and a half faster than what he had thought. Like, this guy is so relatable, it's not even funny.
What was your time on the race?
What do you want?
It was 7:15. When we first started talking about
you'll know when you get the cover of the magazine.
I was hoping for an 8:30 to begin, like when we were first talking about it. But then, like, as I was doing my training, I did one run in like 7:58 or something. I was like, well, I kind of got to pick a new time here. Like, I got a 7:15, a respectable mile time. Not that great. I would like to say I could have pushed harder and maybe broke the 7 minute, but I don't think I could have, because I was legit starting to get the little close in. Like, it was getting a little dark on the edges on my way through. So I don't know that I could have made it.
No, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think you could have, because I saw you immediately following the race, and I go, Shackelford, how you doing? And you just immediately drop to a knee, and you just give me one finger. Don't give me Nux. I'm going for Nux. You just give me a finger, and you just recoup.
He number one. He knew it. He number one.
He said, put it on the magazine.
Well, in any race I've ever done, like, when I just stop dead, like, that's when I feel the worst. Like, I've ran some harder races where, like, I was able to kind of just walk it off and I felt better. But this one, I actually felt like I was going to piss my pants. Like, when I sat
that's
down,
whenever your body was just
when I sat
losing
down,
all function.
I could feel some pee, like, starting to trickle out. I was like, I'm going to piss myself right here in front of all these people.
So you almost died.
I don't know if I almost died, but I certainly almost released my
Do you know how much better that cover would have been, though, if you had died at the finish line?
I would just say if I would have just pissed myself. I don't want to die. I mean, it was fun.
We could sell a lot of copies of that.
Oh, yeah. That'd be the greatest selling River to River magazine that's for free that's ever been sold.
Oh, yeah.
Where can I get this at? I've never seen this.
I'm going to for sure get a copy. So I already reached out to the producer of the magazine. And, I'm working my magic.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and talk about some fights. UFC Fight Night 153. We had two guys defeated. Both guys retired. Both guys happen to be in the light heavyweight pecking order. First, we'll start off. Jimmy Manuwa absolutely gets starched by Alexander Rakic. 47-minute knockout, or 47-second knockout. Mr. Shackelford, do you think this was the right call for Manuwa to step away from the game?
Did he retire?
Oh, yeah, he retired. I think it was either Instagram or Twitter. He retired.
Yeah, he's how many knockouts? Like, that's like his fifth straight one.
Yeah,
and this kick wasn't really. It was with the end of the foot. It wasn't even like a shin to head or anything. This was end of the foot to his head, which is not as strong. That's not a 100% strength kick, and he looked like a train hit him. Like,
yes,
he fell. And really, his head bouncing off the canvas was probably more of a hit than he took originally. So, dude's been in a million wars. I think he was like a really high-level kickboxer before he came to MMA. He needs to be out of there.
Yes, I absolutely
He really
agree.
didn't need to be in there with this kid. It was too much.
Yeah, 47-second knockout speaks volumes there. So, second guy that we had retire was Alexander Gustafsson. Retires inside the cage. I guess it makes it a little better since it was like a home court advantage, getting to retire in front of the fans. Despite being a huge favorite, he gets beat by Anthony Smith. First, we'll talk about the fight itself. Mr. Shackelford, Smith won obviously 2 of the 3 rounds leading into that. Was on his way to win the fight, ends up getting a submission in the 4th round. What were your thoughts about this fight, and how did Anthony Smith basically narrow the gap, win this fight, despite being such a big dog?
You know, the reason I thought technique-wise, I thought he would be okay, but I was more concerned about his headspace because of what he had said, like, I didn't even want to take this fight, I need time off, and he never really backed away from that, even leading up to the fight. He went in and took it. You know, it just looked like Gus couldn't pull the trigger. Smith just basically just walked forward, pressured him, and I mean there was parts in those first 2 rounds where Gus was just turning around and running away, running. And it wasn't like he was getting pressured so hard that
it reminded me whenever he used to fight John Jones, like whenever John would start up in the tempo and he would just kind of take off.
Yeah, I don't know. Those first 2 rounds, that was basically it. It was Smith coming forward, landing here and there. Gus, maybe landing a shot here and there, backing out, and just didn't pull the trigger. Now, the third, I think he got a takedown somewhere. He did land some more shots, but we also know that Anthony Smith broke his hand really bad in the second round. Third, you maybe could have gave the round to Gustafsson, and then in the fourth, he kind of tried going for a takedown, and it wasn't a very good takedown, and Smith just took his back, choked him out. Weird. I mean, I wasn't worried about Gustafsson's headspace, but it looks like I needed to be. It looked like everybody needed to be.
He was checked out before the fight.
I hate to say it, but it looked like he was. That wasn't the same guy that, nearly fought Jones to death. I mean, or had that crazy fight with, even a DC, or had the crazy fight with Glover. We just know Gustafsson as this one type of guy. In this fight, he wasn't. And I was very surprised he said he was retiring at the end, too. But then once hindsight's 20/20. When you look at the fight now, you kind of look at it and you're like, well, that was in his head before the fight, even.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So Gus announces that he's retiring. It's kind of weird whenever you look at the light heavyweight landscape because now it looks like we have a guy in Anthony Smith who is basically heads and shoulders above everyone else. You have Thiago Santos, who I think they really gave that number 1 contender to just because he moved up and he's new blood in the weight class. But outside of those guys, you really just have a bunch of people that John Jones has beaten and really don't have a chance to beat an Anthony Smith or beat a John Jones all the way down until the only fresh new blood we have in this division now is Alexander Raychik, who now moves into the rankings at 11, and Johnny Walker, who's sitting there at 12. We're sitting there with just 2 guys who are basically the only chance to beat one of these guys, and they're down below 10. So it's going to take fights just to even make those matchups happen. Where do you think the light heavyweight weight class goes from here?
Well, these updated. I'm looking on the UFC app, and these rankings, they need to be, because we know DC's never coming back to 205. They have him at 1, basically. You got Thiago Santos at 2, then Anthony Smith at 3. But then now, if you look at it, you got Gus, who's retired, but then you got Dominic Reyes. How is Jan 6th? He just got mauled by, who mauled him?
Jan got beat. I can't remember who it was.
Let me look real quick before Oh, it was by Thiago Santos.
Yeah, that's right.
But then, so when I'm looking at this, you got Dominic Reyes, Corey Anderson, how Corey Anderson's 8, I don't know. Then you got that Raychik, Johnny Walker, and man, those last 2 guys, Serkinov and Krylov, you got about 4 guys. You got Raychik, Walker, Corey Anderson, and Dominic Reyes are the new guys, and then including Smith and Santos. So there's some action there. Now, out of those guys who I've always said, I think it's got to be another really tall, long-limbed guy that's going to be the guy to beat him. I think you just have to have the same reach as him. So that kind of leaves Anderson out and is more in the Dominic Reyes, Ray Kick, and Johnny Walker range. So at least just physically, from height point of view, we got 3 guys there that might be able to challenge him. We'll just have to see.
See, I think the only smart move to go from here is, so you have Johnny Walker who just had successful shoulder surgery, and you have a guy like Anthony Smith who basically nobody's been able to touch him that's, other than John Jones. I feel like the only thing to do, since Anthony Smith wants that time off, is basically just group those guys together and say, okay, you guys are going to take plenty of time off, enough for Johnny Walker to get healthy, enough for Anthony Smith to kind of clear his head, and then we're going to have those guys fight, even though they're so far apart in the rankings, because you have to strike when the iron's hot. You got to keep these guys on their winning streaks fighting in order to make something appealing to fight John Jones.
Yeah, when I'm looking at it, I think maybe you could put like Reyes up against Anderson, because Anderson said he doesn't want anybody lower than him. So right at this point, that only leaves Smith and Reyes. So maybe give Smith a little time, give Reyes and Anderson a go, and then give Rakic and Johnny Walker a go, because Rakic is a number 11 right above Johnny Walker. So
that's almost too good of a fight, though, to have when those guys don't have any clout,
Yeah, true.
Because the average fan just is not going to know those guys.
Yeah.
That's the only bad thing, that I'm just talking about, them just getting stale with this weight class.
Yeah, they I guess it just all depends on how many times Jones wants to fight. He said he wants to stay as busy as possible.
Yeah, I imagine after if he beats Santos, I give him like 2 months and he's already got another fight announced.
Yeah. And then you got to look out for someone like Luke Rockhold. I wonder, Luke Rockhold has a fight signed coming up. I'm not exactly sure against who, but it's at 205. So he's a name, and I know him and John Jones have some bad blood, so he could easily, say Smith wants to take a little time off, they could easily, if Rockhold wins his next one, just go ahead and bounce him up.
Yeah, that would actually be,
because he has the name.
Yeah, you got to keep the names in there to keep things fresh. So we'll go ahead and talk about UFC 238. I kind of preluded, said that it is probably the biggest card of the year. This is, honestly, from top to bottom, this is one of the best cards that I've seen in quite some time. Basically, you have ranked opponents all the way throughout this thing. And if you look at just top 5 matchups or title fights, you have 5 top 5 matchups or title fights. And you have 6 top 10 matchups. So this card, absolutely, top to bottom, is loaded to the gills. So I'm going to go ahead and have you pick some fights here. I wrote them down, hoping that you'll be able to break down most of these. All these are big names. All the odds are just razor thin. There's only 2 fights where the odds for the favorite are bigger than minus 155, which is almost unheard of on a UFC card. So these are razor thin decisions here. We'll start off with a featherweight matchup with Ricardo Lamas versus Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar is a minus 155 favorite to Ricardo Lamas plus 125. Mr. Shackelford, what do we like here?
That was one that I didn't go over. What was that? Who's the favorite?
Calvin Kattar.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to say that. Man, Lamas is, he dropped 2 there to Bektik and Emmett, but then he just mauled Darren Elkins in his last one. That one's a very tough one to pick. I would go ahead and go Kattar, just because he's a little bit younger. He's only coming off, man. You know what? Go Lamas.
You like Lamas?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next fight, we'll go women's strawweight. Carolina Kovalkiewicz versus Alexa Grasso. Kovalkiewicz is a minus 125 favorite over Alexa Grasso, who's a minus 105. This fight's basically a pick'em. Mr. Shackelford, I'm going to say that a lot, but who do you like in this one?
This is another one that is just dead even. Grasso's coming off that really, really one-sided loss to Tatiana Suarez, and then Kovalkiewicz has dropped like, I want to say two of her last three. She's actually lost 2, won 2, lost 2. Man, this is tough. One has a win over Herrig, one has a loss over Herrig. You know, I'm going to say Kovalkiewicz. I don't think she's going to lose. I don't think she's going to lose again.
Yeah, I actually really like that pick as well. So we'll go through, I think there's 3 bantamweight matchups that are top 10 fighters going head-to-head. First on the docket, this could potentially be a title eliminator. You have Aljamain Sterling at minus 135 and Pedro Munoz at plus 105. Aljamain Sterling is a slight favorite in this fight. Munoz coming off of that big win against Cody Garbrandt. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
We are going to go for the dog. We're going to go Munoz.
Why does he keep getting disrespected like this?
I don't know. When you look at his thing, I thought he beat John Dodson. Dude, he's basically like undefeated in the UFC if you just break his stuff down. I'm not sure why. Aljamain's a solid fighter, a very good fighter, but he's mostly a wrestler, and I gotta think that Pedro Munoz, who's a very good guy on the ground and a very good stand-up guy, is gonna be able to keep Aljamain's wrestling off of him. I mean, the biggest thing for Aljamain, he's gigantic for that weight class, and he seems to just be a wicked on these guys. But I feel like Pedro Munoz is going to get him. I think between his combination of his good wrestling, his jiu-jitsu, and his stand-up, I think he will be able to take it from Aljamain here.
Yeah, I actually like that as well. And it was within the last year that Aljamain got knocked dead against Marias, actually. So you think a guy like Pedro Munoz, who, you know, I know Cody Garbrandt doesn't have a phenomenal chance. He's coming off of 2 first-round finishes. He's looking really, really crisp. You have to think that something has to give in that matchup, and I think it will be Aljamain Sterling's chin. So women's strawweight matchup, Tatiana Suarez is actually the biggest favorite on the card. She is a minus 850 favorite over Nina Ansaroff, who's Ansaroff. You know there's always one name that I'm going to butcher. I promise I have them from here on out, though. She's a plus 525 dog. Is there any way that she will be able to pull off this victory?
I don't think so. I really think Tatiana's the next champ in this weight class at 115. The last time she fought, she was the underdog against Grasso. I think you may have won some money on that card.
Yes,
because I told you straight up, like, this is wrong. They messed this up. The odds on that one. That was actually against Grasso. I think Grasso was ranked like 9 and Tatiana was 12. So Vegas just looked at that or something, because I remember the odds were like nuts. But no, Nina Ansaroff's a little bit more of a Thai fighter, and she's gotten a lot better at defending takedowns, which she's won several in a row because of that. But I don't see any way she can keep Suarez off of her.
Yeah, no, I agree. Tatiana Suarez, she's definitely a name that you're going to be looking out for. And if she's ever an underdog again, we got to bet her.
Yeah, for sure.
So heavyweight matchup. I believe this is the only heavyweight fight on the card. It's actually a really exciting fight, though. 2 guys that I know you and I both really like to watch. You have Tai Tuivasa opening as a minus 140 favorite. To Begloy Ivanov plus 110 underdog. Mr. Shackelford, who do you like in this fight?
We're going to go Tuivasa. This is the last chance he gets from us, though. Just stylistically, I mean, he's quite a bit weird. Blagoy is only like 5'8" or something, and you remember he's got that big right hand.
But he's tough as nails,
that's about it. He's the dude that got like shot or stabbed and was like in a coma for like, you remember him?
Stabbed, and he was in a coma, I believe, 28 days.
Yeah, it was something insane. I don't think he'll get knocked out. I think it's going to be a back and forth, like
This is a dream heavyweight fight. This is Mr. Shackelford's, or this is Leighton C's dream heavyweight fight.
These are, I guarantee, they stand in front of each other and throw haymakers.
I guarantee it.
Tuivasa, you remember his last fight? He had JDS on. I almost said a bad word. He had him on funky legs several times, but just kind of let him off the hook. Ended up getting mounted and just kind of TKO'd out. He wasn't really hurt, but he wasn't getting up either. So he needs to come back from that loss in a big way.
Yeah, man. As far as fights that I'm really looking forward to, I think this might be like top 3 because this is going to be a hell of a fight. So back on the bantamweights, kind of odd here. It seems like they have them switched because we have a matchup of top 10 fighters. We have a matchup of top 5 earlier in the card at bantamweight. Jimmy Rivera, Peter Yan. Peter Yan opens as a minus 350 favorite to Jimmy Rivera's plus 265. Mr. Shackelford, kind of surprising to me that Rivera is such a big dog, but who do you like in that fight?
Peter Yan, for sure. Peter Yan's a killer. You remember what happened to Jimmy Rivera in his last fight?
Well, which fight was it?
So he got knocked dead by Moraes.
Oh, I remember,
and then he fought Aljamain Sterling. You remember he just basically stood there?
Yes.
I mean, he didn't do anything.
Yeah, no, now I see why he's a big...
He looks...
Dude, you know, I'm still locked in on Jimmy Rivera whenever he fought Uriah Faber.
Well, he was
I lost money on that
all the way up until that Moraes fight, and he got a quick knockout, and then I don't know if he was just gun shy or just wasn't ready, but he didn't do anything against Aljo. I mean, he just stood there. So, got to go Yan. Yan beat the crap out of Dodson. He's a tough guy. He's 12-1. He's an up and coming guy, super tough, super well rounded, and I just cannot pick Jimmy Rivera against them. Just after his last performance and just how good and tough Peter Yan is, I cannot pick Rivera.
Yeah, man, that scares the hell out of me. I hope we don't see the Jimmy Rivera we've seen in the last 2 fights. I really don't. So next up, this might be the main event. Is it safe for me to say that?
Definitely.
I think this is
in everybody's eyes, this is the main event. The only reason it's not is because there's 2 title fights.
I mean, this is the selling point to the card. This is the reason why I'm going to actually be going to Chicago to watch this fight. And it's Tony Ferguson, lightweight matchup. Tony Ferguson, our boy, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Matchup of number 2 versus number 4. Cowboy is a plus 125 dog to Tony Ferguson, minus 155 favorite. Mr. Shackelford, I say it every single time we have a Cowboy fight to discuss. You better not pick against Cowboy.
I'm going to pick Cowboy. The reason is that his last fights, you know, he had those couple losses, but like I was saying, they were against some very good 170-pound fighters.
Dude, that sharpened him so much for this.
It did. I think, especially in that Leon... I used the Leon Edwards one because we know how good Leon Edwards is, and Cowboy really made that a fight just off of technique, just fighting technique and tactics. And he's really carried that into his last few fights. He's obviously not any faster than he ever was. He's not stronger than he ever was. But his fighting tactics have gotten so much better. It's got to be because the guys he's working with, like Joe Schilling, especially his kickboxing. His kickboxing, you know, used to he was a really good kickboxer, but he was always there to hit. Well, now he's still basically in that stance, the same stance he was on, but I think his shot, his punch, and kick selection is so much better now that he's not there to hit on the return as much. And he is just... It's almost like he's slicker than he ever was before, but he's really not. It's not like a McGregor or a Roy Jones Jr. type slickness where 1 minute's there and 1 minute he's gone. He's always there. He's just not there to be hit like he was. So... Ferguson's coming off of a lot of weird stuff in his life. We know he's going to come to fight, but the one thing we positively, absolutely know about Tony Ferguson is he gets hit. And he prides himself on that fact that he wants to get hit as much as he hits and just see who wins, which is something Cowboy used to do. And it takes you a really, 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 really far away. But eventually, your chin juice wears out. And we've seen Ferguson knocked down
multiple times
in every fight in the last like 6 or 7 fights.
Even the fight against Anthony Pettis.
Yes, Pettis is maybe 1 or 2 punches away from ending that fight. Just a little bit better punch selection once Tony's down and he wins that fight. So I'm looking for Cowboy to use that new, use the new style that he has to kind of out-slick Ferguson, rock him early, and keep him rocked, and maybe get a finish. I think he'll get a finish.
I really do. I think he's going to submit him.
I think that's because the other thing, like with Pettis and some of these Lando Venata, some of these other guys that knocked him down, once they knocked him down, they kept trying to hit him.
Exactly.
Instead of just do what you would most of the time, jump on his back and try to sub him. Tony is a pretty good ground fighter. I think that's what worries people. But Cerrone's not going to be worried about going to the ground.
Absolutely
with him.
not.
And if you look at Kevin Lee versus Ferguson, Kevin Lee had that big staph infection, ended up wearing out. But that whole first period, he took him down, mounted him, had his back. Like had he not worn out, he was winning that fight big time.
Yeah.
So I think Cowboy gets the finish here. Now, the biggest problem, Cowboy's always his biggest problem is he's a slow starter, and he always says that. And his last fight even
Ferguson
said,
kind of is too, though.
Well,
with the first round knockdowns, the flash knockdowns.
He just runs straight at the guys, and that's what Cerrone says. Like he even said about his last one, he said if Al would have came just straight at me, he probably would have got me out of there in a couple punches because he had that kind of mental lapse. He said he wasn't getting warm in the back. He just wasn't feeling good. So if you get a Ferguson that just runs straight out there and goes ballistic, it could spell some trouble. But exactly like you said, what happens to Ferguson? He really doesn't get started until after he's knocked down for the first time. Yeah. I don't think he can be afforded that opportunity this time with Cowboy.
Yeah, and you always point at the Leon Edwards fight. I think this is going to go... You remember the Charles Oliveira fight? I believe it was... Or no, it was Alex Oliveira, where he ended up getting him in that submission. I think it was a triangle choke from top.
Yeah.
And I could see this fight ending in that similar way, to where he just jumps on him instead of just trying to pound his head in, finishes it with a submission. But the thing that I like for Cowboy in this situation is that he says that Aliquinta would have finished him had he just went out there and just basically put it on him from the beginning. But who's a faster starter than Mike Perry?
Yeah, very true.
And Mike Perry couldn't figure it out. Mike Perry didn't stand a chance against Cowboy.
You're right.
And Cowboy, since that Leon Edwards fight, I think has gotten so much better, especially with just the opening bell. So if there was ever a time where I could just say this guy wins this fight on this night, this would be it. Because Cowboy definitely deserves that next title fight.
Yeah. This is clearly the winner of this will get the next
absolutely
title shot.
It's an eliminator.
It clearly is. So he's had an incredible run this run. It is a quick turnaround for him, but for him I feel like 4 or 5 weeks is all he needs to get. It's almost better for him on those 4 and 5 weeks. Now like a week's probably too much, but 4 or 5 weeks is solid.
Yeah, I mean, he's made a living off of it so far this week. This will be his 4th fight since November 10th.
That's crazy. And he hasn't really... I mean, Perry, he didn't take any damage.
Mm-mm.
What was his last one?
Hernandez,
he didn't take much damage. What was his last one?
Aliquinta.
That one was a little bit... What was the 4th one in there? Oh, this is the 4th
This is the 4th.
Okay. Iaquinta, he got tagged a couple times, but really over that, I mean, he didn't take much wear and tear on those.
No,
that we know of.
Yeah, I have not been as excited for a fight in quite some time. So we'll go ahead and go to the title fights here. First up is probably my favorite female fighter, Valentina Shevchenko. Looks to defend her belt against Jessica Ai. This is another lopsided one if you just look in the eyes of Vegas. Ai opens as a plus 650 dog to Valentina Shevchenko's minus 111 or 1100 favorite. Mr. Shackelford, is there any way that the Evil Eye can figure out a way to finish this fight and win?
I don't really think. I mean, as far as stylistically goes, they basically fight a lot alike. Valentina's a little more karate style. Ai is a little bit more boxing with a little bit of Thai in there. They basically have the same game plan. They'll strike. If it gets close, they'll get a takedown. They're a little bit more of like a game plan fighter. Or like, I would almost put them in like, if you're watching two high school heavyweights wrestle, like, you know it's only going to be a 1-point match, so they're just doing just enough not to get called for stalling. That's how I see this fight going.
Yeah.
I think Valentina has had some exciting fights where she did really well, but a lot of them are decisions, and a lot of them are, just she did just enough to eke out a decision. At one point, if you look at Jessica Ai, she's on a 4-fight losing streak at one point. Now she's dropped down. She's had a couple wins, but it was against Kalindra Faria, I don't know her. Jessica Rose Clark, I do know her. And Caitlin Chukagian, those are all decisions. She won. She's a tough fighter. She's a very good fighter. That division, she's the 125-pound division. She's found a lot more success than she did at 135. But I think Shevchenko's just going to be a hair ahead of her at every turn. So
yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I feel like we're going to have a ton of fireworks, like starting with the Tai Tuivasa fight, and then the Peter Yan, and then Cowboy Cerrone, which is basically the main event. And then it's going to be like just like a kind of a 5-round dragger, and then fireworks at the end.
Yeah, that was when I was looking at it. I was like, man, I think I'm going to order this and buy it at home. I work late on Saturday night, so it'll be something that it'll be a game time decision. But when I was looking at the card, and I was like, well, that one may put me to sleep. Like, already working a little late, that one may end up putting me to sleep. I don't know though.
So the main event. We have a bantamweight showdown. Henry Cejudo looks to attain his second belt, be the 4th fighter in UFC history, I believe, to hold them at the same time. Cejudo is actually a dog in this fight. He's coming in and fighting Marlon Moraes, who is the favorite at minus 125. Basically a pick'em. Marlon Moraes coming off of 3 straight first-round finishes. Henry Cejudo obviously coming off of his big win against Demetrius Johnson. And his most recent, where he absolutely killed Barry Bonds himself and T.J. Dillashaw. So, Mr. Shackelford, can Henry Cejudo and will Henry Cejudo be the 4th multiple title holder at the same time?
This was the hardest one to pick on the card. This is a tough one. Me. Mariah's just, when I think about him and I think of how he's fought, he just has 0 weaknesses. He's an incredible striker. I think he's got that traditional Muay Thai background, but since he's been with Mark Henry, he's got a little bit more of that bounce in his step, like Frankie Edgar style. And then his jiu-jitsu is real solid. His takedown defense is real solid. He's about as bulletproof as a fighter can get. Cejudo's also very good all around. I don't know why. I know I should pick Moraes off of just all the tangibles, all the, he's a little bit better striker than Henry. He's got a little better jiu-jitsu. It's the wrestling that I don't know where his wrestling's at, really.
Exactly, I agree.
So I think I'm going to go Cejudo.
The only guy we would have seen him test against was Aljamain Sterling, and we didn't even have time for that.
No, basically Aljo shot in for a long shot. Moraes tried to kick him, actually, but Aljo moved in so close and so fast, he ended up bouncing off his knee. So I am.
You know that's the exact way every single guy who's not a wrestler imagines their fight going against a wrestler. Like, yeah, I'll just kick him in the head.
I'll just throw a kick up and it'll hit him. No, that was probably on accident, but I am gonna go Cejudo.
Me too. I love that.
I have picked against him the last several times, and he's proved me wrong. I mean, he beat the brakes off of an EPO filled Dillashaw. Had a close fight with Mighty Mouse, and then the only one he dropped other than that was against Joey Benavidez. But since that fight, he's came so much along. I think he's going to use his mix of that kind of little bouncing on his toes karate style striking that he's kind of acclimated to, or he's picked up with his takedowns, and I think he's going to just keep Moraes guessing enough to where he's not ever going to get comfortable to be able to set his feet and throw the bombs that he's known for, because Cejudo's going to keep him off and on.
Yeah, I think the biggest key to this fight is that it's a 5-round fight. Moraes has only fought 5 rounds one time, and it wasn't even in the UFC. And really, he's only been 1 round. 1 round has been his last 3 fights, and I just don't see Henry Cejudo having a weak enough chin to go down. I don't think he's dumb enough to go out there and just bull rush him and get knocked out like Aljamain was.
Yeah, and Cejudo, he mixes his takedowns really well. He's not a guy that's just doing the bum rush. He's on his toes. He's bouncing in and out. You don't know if he's going to use his right hand or if he's going to shoot. He's got that nice inside trip that he uses from like the over-under position. So the tangibles, there's a lot there, but to me, it's more the unknown, the intangible, the unknown of how good Moraes' takedown defense is, and how well you can't plant your feet and throw those bombs or those kicks when you're thinking the dude's going to be shooting on you.
Exactly.
You just can't do it. So I think that negates one of his biggest weapons, and that's his leg kicks and that lower calf kick. We'll see come fight night, but I think Cejudo's going to take it.
Yeah, I do too. I absolutely love it. I'm really looking forward to this card. I'll actually be there. I bought my tickets.
Did you really?
Yeah, I bought my tickets 2 days ago.
I think I'm just going to order it home and watch it on my phone. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to fall asleep. And not because the fights aren't exciting, but I know because I work 7 in the morning to 7:30 at night. By the time I get home, it's like 8:30. I'm going to be dragging ass. So
what you need to do is call the producer, call Dale, and you guys just meet together. You go over to Dale's little cozy cave. You watch on the Jumbotron, and you guys just chillax, watch a little bit of fights. Latency will be there just for the heavyweight fight. Watch them play Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and you'll be set. I mean, you can talk Dale into spending $30 to watch Cowboy fight.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't even have to say that.
Yeah,
I'd just be like, I'd be like Cowboy. He'd be like, I got it on.
Yeah, I've got it on already. So, Mr. Shackelford, any little news and notes, any things we need to be looking forward to this week? What do you got for us?
I don't think anything. I was really, really trying to think of something. We already talked about, my Mexican brethren.
Yeah, that was the only thing that I really thought.
That was it. I meant to bring it up a little bit later. And
did you realize how many freaking boxing experts there are now?
A bazillion.
A ton, dude. Million. They were all talking about how what Anthony Joshua did wrong, and I'm like, Stephen A.
Oh, Stephen A.
When did you get so good at boxing?
He calls him Butterbean. But, hey, Butterbean was a badass. Butterbean was the king of the 5-rounders. If it was a 5-round fight, he was going to smash your head in. Now, when he got up to like 500 pounds, he wasn't quite as good. But even in his younger day, he was quick as hell too. And he hits like a freaking Russian hammer. So they trying to make fun of the guy by calling him Butterbean, still not even that big of a diss. So he needs to stay in his lane on that one. You know what I think it was? He's a Wilder homer. He's a Wilder homer. So he was really wanting that Wilder versus Joshua fight. So because he didn't get that, he's ragging on my man, Mr. Snickers Ruiz Jr.
Yeah, I absolutely hate that. Whenever people compare him to Butterbean, it's like, come on, like, Butterbean was this. Butterbean wouldn't have lasted to the 7th round.
No, that's why he was the 5 round. He only fought 5 round fights. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. And,
dude, did you ever see the Jackass where he punched Johnny Knoxville?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think Johnny Knoxville almost died.
Yeah, because like
he hit him, and then Knoxville didn't know where he was. He's like, "What happened?" Like they clearly, and I think he's talked about it before. That like that's one of the worst stunts he ever did.
No, it was
getting
stupid.
hit by. The dude had a bicycle seat go up in his butthole and destroy his.
Flew a kite out of his ass, and
yeah, like there was a lot of stuff that caused lasting damage, and he said getting punched by Butterbean was one of the worst things he ever did.
I could see it. I mean, that'd be terrible. But yeah, and everybody talks about, oh man, we're rooting from a Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua fight. It's like, did anybody not watch the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight? Like, Tyson Fury beat the hell out of him for 12 rounds.
He boxed his ears off for, I can't do the math. He boxed his ears off for the entire fight minus about 10 seconds.
Yeah, and everybody's mad at Joshua for not taking the fight.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense to me. So, Mr. Shackelford, anything else before we wrap this bad boy up?
Nope. Big fights this weekend. Hopefully we do well.
All right, and on that note, for Drake, for Leighton C., and Mr. Shackelford, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.